Who is the most owned 5-star character in Genshin Impact? The answer might not be what you expect. These are the top 10 most owned 5-star characters in Genshin. But before we get to the top 10, let's take a look at the very bottom of the list. Shiori is the least owned character with only a 10.2% ownership rate. I guess nobody really wished for her on her first banner, which is kinda surprising. She is by no means a bad character, so maybe with her being on another recent banner she'll be more popular. Slightly above her is Wriothesley with only a 13.2% ownership rate. I was surprised by this because he seemed pretty popular on his release, but I guess that's what not getting a rerun will do to a character's ownership rate. Hopefully we'll see him again on a banner soon because he is a really cool character. Just above him is Albedo with a 14.6% ownership rate. I don't think I've ever seen him on a banner once since I've been playing Genshin, which is crazy. If you own him, you truly do own a rare character. Do you think we'll ever see him on a banner again? Those are the bottom 3 characters, which surprisingly most Genshin players don't own. Now time to take a look at the top 10. In the 10th spot is Raiden with a 79.5% ownership rate. Being the lowest of the top 10, still over 3/4 of Genshin players own her, which is crazy. It is understandable how popular she is though, being both an Archon and a super powerful Electro support who can add a ton of extra damage to your team. I've also seen her on reruns pretty frequently, which is nice. Next up in 9th place is Zhongli with an 81.5% ownership rate. I'm not surprised by this because he's yet another Archon and debatably the best support character in the game because of his shield. He just blocks like everything and makes boss fights much easier. Also his burst can do a ton of damage once you level him. In 8th place is yet another Archon, Furina, with an 82.4% ownership rate, which makes sense because she is just an amazing character all around. She can boost damage, heal your team, and is overall just a great character to have in your team. Plus she has a really cool story with the Fontaine Archon quests. Now for number 7 we have Chi-Chi with an 85.8% ownership rate. At first I was surprised by this because I've never seen anyone use her in game, like ever, but then I remembered she is a standard character and who hasn't lost a banner to her? Apparently just me because I don't have her. Is she worth leveling if I ever get her? Let me know. And the trend of standard characters continues with number 6 being Jean with an 85.9% ownership rate. She was my first 5-star and honestly helped me out a lot during early game. She can be a really good animal support if you build her well. Her being able to heal everyone, especially at early levels, is so nice. It kinda makes you remember that some enemies in Genshin can be hard if you don't have a healer on your team. Also, she has the most amount of outfits of any Genshin character, so that's a cool fun fact. Now for the top 5. But before we get there, if you've made it this far into the video, do me a big favor and smash that subscribe button if you enjoy learning more about your favorite Genshin characters. It's 100% free. In 5th place is Mona with an 86.1% ownership rate. She is yet another character on the standard banner, but I do see a lot of people using her mostly for showcases. I don't really see her in game much. She can boost damage a ton, which is why people use her in showcases, and is another good Hydro support. She also was one of the really early released Genshin characters, which makes sense why she's this far up on the list. If you make sure to get good artifacts for her, she can add a lot of extra damage to your team. Next up in 4th place is one of my personal favorite and strongest characters, being Keqing, with an 86.2% ownership rate. She is another standard character, but she really can do so much damage. I've had her since early game and probably have spent the most amount of time building her, but even still, she's able to do much more damage than a lot of my event 5-stars, which is crazy. She's currently still my most powerful character. A lot of people who I've talked to don't like her purely because they've lost a banner to her, but honestly, if you build her well, get her some good artifacts, and level her talents, she's a great character. Now for the top 3, and this is where it gets interesting. Diluc is in 3rd place with an 86.5% ownership rate, which is understandable with him being one of the first obtainable 5-star characters in Genshin and being on the standard banner. He is a good character and can do a ton of damage if you use his burst correctly and have him in a team with other elements that react well with Pyro. And being one of the first characters in the game, I can see why he's this far up on the list. And fun fact, he's currently the only character with a 5-star outfit, which is surprising. Now in 2nd place is surprisingly Nahida with a 93.1% ownership rate. I was not expecting that. I didn't realize she was that popular of a character. It does make sense though, with the Dendro element being implemented into the game later, because she was a good way to get your hands on new elemental reactions, because back then there were like no Dendro characters at all. And she is also an Archon, so it makes sense why she's popular. In general, she is just an amazing support character and definitely a character you should get if you have the chance. Now finally, in our number 1 spot is Kazuha with a massive 93.3% ownership rate. This is huge, but really shows how popular of a character he is. Like, the majority of Genshin players own him, which is crazy. And that's probably because of how useful his animal abilities are and how well he works with other characters. He has amazing crowd control and can kind of just suck up all the enemies into one spot, which makes fighting them and taking them all down much easier. He also works really well with other elements since he's Anemo. Overall, just a great character to have in your team. I thought it was really surprising that both him and Nahida to beat out all of the standard characters. So that wraps up our list of the top 10 most owned Genshin characters. Were you surprised by any of these? Let me know down in the comments.